last week's lesson, you wrote this. You said online LSAT is better.
Yeah, I did. Because I believe it to be true. You can
Okay.
subscribe to these at thinkinglsat.com. If you want to get a weekly email from me with tips and stuff. This week was kind of a shift. I shifted gears a little bit because I was just thinking about like, hey, COVID is not over, but kind of over. Everybody who's wants to be vaccinated is vaccinated, and the world is clearly opening back up. And if we wanted to, we could start teaching live in-person LSAT classes again. But I don't know, Ben, maybe you've changed your mind about this, but do you think you're gonna start commuting to downtown DC again to
No,
teach live LSAT classes?
nope. Absolutely not. I did skim some of your email, or maybe I read the whole thing. But there were some points that stuck out to me precisely because I couldn't agree more. You were talking about the inconvenience of commuting to class. Once you're there in class, you're kind of waiting for, this whole thing to happen. And then it's a 3-hour ordeal because it doesn't make sense to only meet for an hour, but you can do that
Right.
online,
I
right?
didn't
All
even
the
put that in
time.
my column. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, we can drop in. You can drop in and out for a 1 hour LSAT class with very little switching costs, right? I mean, you're literally in a work meeting, and then you just like tab over to LSAT class in
Absolutely.
1 second. You're in LSAT class now, and you're there for an hour, and then you're gone.
Well, let me expand on this for a second. As a business owner of an in-person class for over a decade, right?
Yeah.
Um, the class that I taught was an attempt to teach people the LSAT as best I could under the constraints that are completely unrelated to the learning and success of the student. Now, you might say that sounds um devilish or something, but it's the reality of the situation. I'm sitting here trying to figure out how can I teach someone, and yet I have to reserve a room. We all have to gather and meet in that room. It has to be a certain size to accommodate a certain number of people. And I remember that I chose that we would meet once a week because that sort of made the most sense given. Oh, the other thing was I remember the class started at 6:30 because starting it at 6 meant that people wouldn't be able to park outside the building, but after 6 they could start parking there. So I started the class at 6:30 so I could grab people who were, finishing work, but then could also park. Um, when I had the class starting at 6, people would park on the street, wait for the 6 o'clock time to kick in, and then run into class. Right. So then I moved it to 6:30. But my point is that we were trying the best we could to work within the constraints that we had, given the nature of in-person teaching in the middle of Washington, D.C. But it's not helpful, right? Like when you're trying to think about what's the best way to learn, you create a class that's targeted at what people need to study and at their skill level. And online, we can do that so much better. And if you look at the Demon, right? I mean, it's crazy how many classes we have every day. That was impossible under the old
In
model.
live LSAT classes, you have to shuffle for seats. You have to bring your coffee. You have to bring your snack or whatever. People would be, I'm sure in your class, people would be eating dinner in your
Eating
class
dinner,
at
it would smell
6:30.
up the whole room, and other people, oh, I wish I could have some of that, or that smells like shit. Why do
Have to
I?
sit next to that. That's gross. Um, then an hour later, you would have to stop and take a break because human biological functions required it. You can't just keep
Mm-hmm.
going. I mean, you can
Yeah.
just keep going, and then people have to climb over
Get
their
up and
neighbors
leave.
and
Yep.
make noise and distraction and whatever. If you do take a break, then everybody's like lined up for the bathrooms, or whatever. You take a 5-minute break, but it takes 15 minutes to get people in and out and resettled.
Where's the
And
bathroom key? I couldn't find it. Someone else has it.
so much bullshit like that. Yeah. Explaining where the bathroom is, explaining where the coffee is, explaining, oh, but that Starbucks across the street is the world's slowest Starbucks, so maybe you want to go to the other one around the corner. I mean, Ben and I could each tell just like live teaching stories for forever. Then when you end the class, you have to everybody has to commute all the way damn home
Mm-hmm.
instead of just shutting the Zoom and instantly being home.
Yeah.
None of these wastes of time occur online. It is vastly more efficient. I mean, like, it's got to be 100% more efficient.
At least.
There's no way if you taught, and I mean, geez, if you tried to teach a 1 hour LSAT class, there would be 2 hours of commuting for that 1 hour class.
Yeah.
Um,
And substituting teachers, right? Things come up, people got to find someone else to teach for them. Bam. Doesn't matter where you are in the world. I can take that class. I'll teach it. You take care of your shit.
I would there are so many things that are better about online. So many. Did you ever use name tags in your classes?
You know, there was a time I think that I did.
Like those, I
It was
just
a
would give them a piece
hassle.
of paper. They would
Yeah.
write their name, fold the thing, and put it
Yeah.
on their seat in front of them so that I
Yeah.
could, like, it
Yeah.
would help me to learn everybody's names.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the name charts. Did you ever do that? Like where
Yep.
like first day people are
Seating
saying their
chart,
names, I'm
pass it
writing it
around,
down.
then try to get
Yeah.
people, hey, can you sit in that same seat next time so that
Yeah.
I can have a better chance of remembering your name? On Zoom, it's all automatic. Everybody's just labeled.
Yeah.
It's your first day in class, and I'm able to refer to you by name
Yep.
because it just says it right there, helpfully in Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, that's nice. Uh, bad seats. Did you ever have people who, like, in my tiny classroom that I taught in San Francisco, which I really loved actually, but there would be like seats in the front corners that
Yeah.
had a hard time seeing the
It
whiteboard.
was too much of an angle. Yeah,
Yep, bad
exactly.
angle, lighting issues.
Yep.
Um,
Squeezing in and out of chairs. Class gets fuller, which is exciting, but then it's like now it's like harder to fit everybody in there.
um, the the uh, the back row would sometimes, if depending on the shape of the room, the back row would be like way back there.
Yeah.
I'd be like yelling to reach the people in the back, and I could barely see their faces, and I could tell that they could barely see the whiteboard, and it's
Yeah.
just was real easy for people in the very back row to space out. Plus, people who pick the back row seats are more likely to space out. Um, None of that happens online. Online, everyone's in the front row.
Yep.
If you make a call, if you unmute yourself and talk to me, your face just jumps onto my screen with your name, and I'm like
Yep.
looking you in the eyes,
Yeah.
which I could never do to someone who was in the very back of my class. Uh, you can turn up and down my volume so that it fits you perfectly. You can blow
Yeah.
my face up or down as suits your preferences.
Yeah. A kid comes in the room and needs your help immediately. Mute, help them, come right back to class. The world is perfectly fine.
Yeah. And then the God, I mean, there's a million things. The one thing that one of the many things that I didn't anticipate about teaching online was the Zoom chat feature is just unreal. Like it
Oh, yeah,
changes
yeah.
changes the game as far as live LSAT instruction is concerned. I can't imagine going back to teaching a live LSAT class without having a chat available for the class.
Yeah.
What do you mean they can't help each other? What do you mean they can't silently have this group conversation that I, by the way, dip in and out of? Right?
Yeah.
Like I'm teaching the class, so it's not like I'm reading the chat constantly. But when I say, okay, do this question, and I give you 90 seconds or 2 minutes to work on a question, I can then go look at all the conversations that you've been having in the chat. I can participate there silently in the chat if I want to, or I
Yeah.
can, when I come back on the mic, I can say something about the conversation that you've been having in the chat. The students are amazingly helpful to one another, which in the live classroom is a fucking pain in the ass, and it's a distraction, and it sucks. There's
Yeah.
two girls that I'll never forget because they sat in the front row. They were really good students. They were working really hard, but they would just whisper to each other because they were working on the question. They were helping each other.
Yeah.
but they were helping each other in a way that I could hear. And it was a distraction when I was trying to talk. Now the whole room is doing that in the chat. By the way, if you hate the chat, you just hide the chat. But if you want to participate in the chat, then you participate in the chat. If you want to have private conversations with each other, you can do that in the chat. If you want to send me a private message, you can do that.
Yeah.
I had a girl one time, Ben, in one of my classes, hold up a sign from the back of the room. She held up a sign to me. It was private communication to me in the
What did it
analog
say?
world. It said, dude, your fly's down.
Dude.
I was like, whoops, thank you. But that was helpful. But
Yeah.
on Zoom, you can ask like a question that you're too embarrassed to ask, a private
Yeah.
joke that you want to make. If our classes are big, we tend to have TAs in our classes these days. So
Mm-hmm.
now we've got a professional extra teacher tagging along
Yeah.
who can answer questions and have private conversations in the background while the class is going on. They can share links to lessons we have, links to recorded classes we have. It's just so much better. If you're thinking about signing up for like whatever local Kaplan class, please don't. That would be a tragic waste of money and tragic
Money.
waste of time.
Well, it's so weird because you're wasting time, as you've mentioned, commuting to and from the class, in the class itself, the class inefficiency within the class. But it's also odd that you don't get as much time, right? Like it's like you're wasting all this time, but then you're also not even just getting that much time because you can only meet once or twice a week in person. And then it's like, okay, that's enough meeting in person that's going to take place. With the Demon, you can meet every day, multiple times a day. Not that you should do that. That's a lot of or like live class, but you could and you can.
Yeah. And, you know, boy, the old days, somebody's sick,
Oh yeah.
people would like tough it out and come to class,
And other people get sick.
get everybody else in the room sick, or they would have to miss class because they were sick.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can tell you what we talked about. Maybe I recorded some clips and maybe I uploaded those, and maybe you can watch them later on, on the Demon. All of our classes are just, we have a process where they're just all recorded, they're all posted. You can see every one of our
Within
classes.
hours.
If you subscribe now to the Demon, I realized this yesterday, that if you subscribe now to the Demon Live, there's over 1,000 hours worth of recorded past classes that are
Holy
available.
cow.
You can watch all of
Yeah.
my classes since the beginning of Demon Live, or all of Ben's classes, or all of
Yeah.
any of our awesome teachers. You can choose and you can binge them if you want.
Yeah.
It's all just there, 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
um I don't know, it's fantastic. And I guess the most important thing, which is the thing that really matters to our students, and it's the thing that really matters to us, is that the results from all of this are better.
Yeah.
Like I used to always say, oh, well, yeah, if you do a 2 or 3 month class, we would expect you to improve by 10 points.
Yeah.
And I still do say that, but now it's just like, there's so many times, so many people who are like, oh, well, I started at 137 and now I'm trying to stay consistently in the 160s.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, really? That's a
Yeah.
20, you're looking at a 25-point improvement and you think you have room for more?
Yeah. Yeah. I've
Cool.
been doing the Demon for 2.5 months now. It's like, whoa. Okay.
Yeah, it's insane. And anyway, I do think it's wildly better to study for the LSAT online. And yeah, when people call me and, I really was hoping that you're going to bring back your live class in Los Angeles. And I'm like, sorry, that ain't happening. But I will tell you that you could
Yeah.
take my live class tonight online from your house, from my house to your house, and we could just get to work.
Yeah.
Oh, how about that? That's the other thing. It's like, well, when does your class start? Oh, well, my next class
Yeah.
starts in 6.5 weeks.
Yep.
You can register for it now. You better, because it's filling up.
Oh my
So
gosh.
you
That's
better register for the
it's almost
class
giving me
6 weeks
anxiety.
in advance.
Like, oh, this class is 4 weeks out, and this is how full it is, and we got to get so many more people, and oh my
People,
gosh.
circumstances change, and they've signed up in advance because the classes would fill, right? So the
Yeah.
class would fill, so which means
Yep.
that, well, I need you to sign up and pay
Yeah.
because the class will fill. And so,
Yeah.
okay, and I've got limited seats, which I also don't have online, but I've got limited seats, and so I've got to get you to sign up and pay in advance. And then if you change your mind, you're going to get married, you're going to travel the world, somebody in your family gets sick, a million other things happen. Now it's like, oh boy, now I've got to try to like fill your seat with a replacement student.
Oh my gosh.
Should
I
I
had
give you a
so many of
refund
those
or not? I want
conversations.
to, but I'm going to like lose out on that seat. It's not going to be filled. This whole big complicated thing. Now it's a subscription model, and you can just like unsubscribe. Like, you were
Like,
subscribed
I'm
for a
done.
while. Like, by the way, don't subscribe in advance. Subscribe on the day that you want to start. Do you want to
Yeah.
start today? Okay, good. Subscribe. And now you've got a 1 month subscription. And if things change, you could just unsubscribe. And it was like you were there, got as much out of it as you could get out of it
Yep.
during the time. I don't, God damn it. I mean, all right, we don't want to make the whole show about this because we could go on for hours, but
Well, I did want to reminisce because I do remember, like, when the business started, it was like trying to get classes full. But then once it got to a point where every class was filling up, it was a new kind of anxiety because it was like I'm turning people away because I can't fit them in the class. But then I knew that there would be a certain number. It's always like one or two who 3 weeks into the class, like something happened, a family member needed help so they're asking to get out of the class. And you're like, dang, I just said no to these people. And there's like managing wait lists. And oh my gosh, it was just such a process. No, it's like, yeah, hop into Zoom. Oh yeah, we could take 100 more people if you'd like. So
this is just amazingly better.
yeah.
Um, okay, that's enough of last week's lesson.